the FantasyBaseballCafe.com's MLB Rundown. I'm your host, Josh Shepardson, and you can follow me on Twitter at BChad50. And I'm joined by CBSSports.com's RJ White, who you can follow on Twitter, where he posts as RJ White1. How's it going, RJ?
Going good. How you doing?
Pretty good. As usual, really good column this week. The first player that you touched on in your Riding the Wave piece was the man who the title was inspired by, the excellent Mr. Burns, and the Burns in this case is Billy Burns, and I'm a fan of his work. Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about him?
Well, Burns is a high on-base percentage, high stolen base type of hitter, making him a great fit atop a major league lineup. The numbers he's putting up this year are in line with his previous work in the minors, especially if you throw out a down 2014 at the plate. He's stolen 10 bases in 12 attempts with the A's this year, and he's been a very smart runner in the minors. He's racked up 128 stolen bases over the last 2 years, while succeeding on more than 90% of his attempts. He's not expected to provide fantasy owners with much power, although he has knocked 2 homers and 124 at-bats with the A's. He manages 2 homers in a total of more than 1,500 minor league at-bats, so you can't really expect the power moving forward. But still, there's a place in a lot of leagues for a player with virtually no power who excels everywhere else and has a premium lineup position. And also, I'm not concerned with him losing playing time to Coco Crisp if Crisp can ever stay healthy. Burns has proven himself a capable leadoff man, and I can't see the A's benching that kind of guy for a guy who's 2 for 45 this year and always injured. Plus, there appears to be some playing time available in left field, and I wouldn't be surprised if the A's eventually decide to trade Josh Reddick to a contender to replenish the farm system a little, especially if they don't make a move out of the cellar relatively soon.
Yeah, I agree with your assessment, and with him posting positive defensive marks in the field as well, you have to think that a speedster like him's going to remain in the lineup when everyone's healthy. I just don't see a way around it, and the fact that they trust him enough to hit him leadoff, I would say speaks volumes of what they think of the bat. Love the really low strikeout rate, just 15%, which means he's putting the ball in play a lot, and no, you don't expect him to maintain a 373 BABIP, but it's going to be above average. He has wheels, and guys that are able to put the ball in play like that and have speed, leg out infield singles, and tend to post high BABIP marks. I mean, you look at his work in the minors, and save for some struggles last season at the AAA level, we got a 381 BABIP with the Nationals organization and 138 plate appearances at the AA level. 349 at the high A level in 2013. So he's a guy that has historically posted high BABIPs. His walk rates in the minors point to maybe some walk upside here in the future, but the biggest problem with Burns is that big league pitchers can challenge him. It was probably a little bit easier to work some walks in the minors where the control isn't just necessarily as good. And we did see him post a walk rate below 10% for the first time since low A in 2014 at the AAA level with just a 7.4% walk rate. He did bump that up to 9.1% this year before getting the call to the majors. So I do think there's a little bit more walk upside that should help offset that BABIP downturn, even if he ends up posting like a 340 BABIP, which I think is very much within reach for him. A few more walks will get him on base to get those stolen bases. And with 10 stolen bases already in the big leagues this year, and 13 in just 43 games played in his big league career. I love the speed upside. And as you noted, he hits the top of the order, so you're going to get some runs scored. Even if the A's offense isn't great, that lineup spot's going to provide him some runs scored potential. So at the least, you're looking at a guy who should contribute in batting average, runs scored, and stolen bases, and should contribute in stolen bases in a big way. So I'm with you. If he's available, and as you noted in your article, if it's a league that really heavily favors home run hitters and things of that nature, not going to have much value. But in your standard 5x5 roto and head-to-head leagues, he's already mixed league relevant in my eyes, and leagues as shallow as 12 teams. Do you agree?
I agree, and I think if you want to look at what his absolute ceiling could be, I mean, this might be pie in the sky thinking, but think about what Ichiro Suzuki was coming into the league. He was a guy that hit, a handful of homers each year, but he carried himself on a very high BABIP that he was able to maintain throughout his entire career. Always would post 30 steal seasons, always would rack up a lot of runs hitting atop that lineup. And he came into the majors a little older. He was more developed, having hit in Japan a lot. I think he was 27 when he came up. Burns obviously is a lot younger. Maybe he could develop into that kind of guy. I don't think he's going to be, Ichiro 10 All-Star game type player, but that's his absolute ceiling. If everything breaks right, we could be looking at that type of player.
And that's not a bad comparison, and at least from a value standpoint, that's what you're looking for with Burns, is that average, the runs, and the stolen bases, and he should be able to contribute in all of those at a notable clip. And again, as a leadoff hitter, and I think that this is something that's easy for gamers to overlook, because batting average doesn't always get the due that it's deserved, but as a leadoff hitter, he's really going to give you the maximum for that plus batting average, because he's going to get more at-bats and plate appearances than a guy that hits down order and hits over 300. So you're really maxing out what he does best with his lineup spot. So as long as he maintains that leadoff spot, and both of us expect him to, I really like him to be a strong 3-category contributor.
And then having a guy like that atop the lineup, getting a lot of at-bats and posting a high batting average really helps to balance out your power hitters that hit a little lower in the lineup, your guys that hit 6th, 7th, maybe a guy like Chris Carter. I mean, if guys like that are getting 400 to 450 at-bats, while a guy like Burns gets 600 to 650, his 300, 320, whatever batting average is going to have a lot more impact than that lower batting average. So instead of averaging the two and saying if you have a 210 hitter and a 310 hitter, then you're looking at a 260 hitter, you're actually more or less looking at a 280 hitter, because that 310 comes more into play.
Yeah, and that's a really good, and I think it's often overlooked point. At-bats are huge for these average guys, and for the low average ones that hit down order like Chris Carter, it's great to have a guy like Billy Burns offsetting them. Speaking of batting average and guys who put the ball in play, Joe Panik is another guy that you discussed in the article. Panik doesn't have the speed. While he has 4 home runs this year in 219 plate appearances, not really a big part of his game. He only hit 5 in 326 plate appearances in the hitter-friendly Pacific Coast League last year, but he can sting the ball just a little bit. And what I think you and I both really like about Panik is that high contact rate. He's got just an 11.9% strikeout rate through 506 plate appearances. He plays a really thin second base, and his 306 average, another guy who is going to help you in batting average, and he hits second for the Giants, so he's going to get those heavy at-bat totals. What else do you like about Joe Panik?
Well, I do think that he could actually hit for a little power moving forward. I don't know that his 4 homers to date are an anomaly. It seems like he's hit a lot more fly balls, and that part of the power has come in the hitting more fly balls. And since fly balls generally tend to lead to more outs, you would expect the trade-off to include a dip in batting average. Instead, he's hitting 307 with a 337 BABIP this year after hitting 305 and 269 at-bats last year with a not that high 343 BABIP, even though he wasn't hitting that many fly balls. While I don't think he's going to become Jeff Kent 2.0, this appears to be a guy capable of hitting 15 to 20 home runs per season, especially if he can continue to ride those developments that he made in his swing, where it seems like he has a lot smoother swing. He's putting the ball in the air more, and obviously when you put the ball in the air, you have a chance for more home runs. I think he could hit those 15 to 20 homers. I think he could still maintain a 300 batting average while doing so. And at second base, that's certainly starter-worthy profile, a top 10 guy for sure.
I'm going to go a little bit lighter on the home run projection, but not much, and that is a really good point about the additional fly balls hit this year. 38.3% fly ball rate according to Fangraphs. And we're at the point where fly ball rate normalizes. So that's definitely attainable going forward. And with a 6.3% home run per fly ball rate, definitely not out of the question that he can maintain that. Just judging by his previous scouting reports, I'm going to go a little bit lighter, but again, not much. I'm thinking more along the lines of 10 to 14 home runs, but I'm with you on the 300-plus batting average. If you look at his BABIP, it's not out of line with what he was doing in the upper minors. 346 BABIP at AAA for Fresno in 2014. So I would expect him to continue to maintain high BABIPs. He hits line drives at a fairly high rate, 22.5% so far in his big league career, and we're almost at that point where line drive rate normalizes too. So really nice batted ball profile, doesn't hit a lot of infield fly balls, so he's not giving away outs. And as we noted immediately, does not strike out much. Even his 12.3% strikeout rate this year is actually a little bit high for his track record as a professional. 10.1% last year, 11.4% at the AA level. So really very bankable batting average. Hitting second for the Giants, you'd expect him to score some runs. And this, I swear this isn't the homer in me coming out. they are a good offense against right-handed pitching this year. So I would expect him to continue to score runs and maybe score upwards of 80 on the season if he can continue to hit at the rate that he is right now. I mean, when you have Buster Posey and emerging Brandon Belt behind you, Hunter Pence in the lineup, you've definitely got the guys to bring you around. So I really like the profile. I'm with you. I think he's a starter in standard leagues, top 10 to 12 second baseman going forward at a position that just isn't particularly good. The middle infield is always tough to fill with viable options, and Panic has definitely emerged as one.
Yeah, I have a league where I'm pretty set at second base. I have a good middle infielder. I still picked him up and threw him at the utility position because I feel he's severely undervalued. And I'm working to trade one of those guys above him because I figure I'm going to get more from him at second base than a lot of other people are going to get from their second baseman right now.
Yeah, and I think by shopping the other guys, you're probably going to get more in return and trade because I still think that there are probably some skeptics about Panic. But we're talking about a first-round pick. Yes, the Giants were criticized a bit for drafting a guy that was considered more safe than high ceiling, but he got to the big leagues quickly and he's producing. So there is some pedigree there, and I'm buying what Panic's selling for the most part.
Me too.
Who else would you like to talk about?
Well, one guy I mentioned as being one of the top drops in leagues is Shane Green. He was a nice sleeper coming into the year. He struck out 81 batters in 78 2/3 innings with the Yankees in his rookie year while posting a 3.78 ERA. That pitcher's apparently disappeared. Green struck out just 5.7 batters per 9 innings across his first 12 starts while posting a 5.40 ERA. He appears to have lost some velocity on his sinker. He hasn't once averaged more than 93.5 miles per hour with it in a start this year after topping that average velocity regularly in 2014. He's also had 4 starts where it averaged less than 92 miles per hour, including his most recent outing when the sinker was around 91.5 miles per hour. It's led to a huge jump in his contact rate, as his whiff rate on his sinker alone has been cut in half. I don't necessarily think he's going to turn things around anytime soon looking at those numbers, so I'm perfectly fine with dropping him as many owners have begun to do.
Yeah, I'm with you on dropping him. Another thing that really needs to be pointed out with Shane Green, and it's a problem that I don't see getting reversed anytime soon, is his massive struggles with left-handed batters. Last year, he faced 181 and allowed a slash line of 281, 365, 400, good for a 345 WOBA. This year, he's faced 148, and it's actually gotten worse for him. He's given up a 324, 378, 519 triple slash, and a 383 WOBA. He also struggled with left-handed batters in the minors. According to Minor League Central, from 2011 on, he faced 844 minor league left-handed batters and allowed a 777 OPS. So a guy that gets touched up by lefties and a pretty easy target to stack against, which if you're a DFS gamer, you're probably familiar with the fact that he gets touched up by lefties because a lot of pundits are willing to grab some below-average lefties just to get that exposure to Green and that ugly WOBA. So I'm with you. If you've got him on your roster, you can cut him. There's likely something better on the wire. Even if you're only spot starting and grabbing someone with a favorable matchup, go ahead and get Green off your rosters at this point.
Yeah, I'd sign up with that. And you know, if he's not striking out people, and of course, if lefties are going to hit him and it's gonna do some damage and go yard a lot, you need to have those strikeouts to balance it out, and he just doesn't have that right now.
Yeah, I mean, perfect example. Guys like you can live with a guy like Ruby De La Rosa or maybe Mike Foltynewicz getting knocked around a little bit by left-handers on occasion because at least they're going to give you the strikeouts. You're not getting that from Green right now, so definitely time to move on from him. And speaking of moving on, let's head to the forum for a few questions. The first is brought to us by user ETL1692. In a 10-team head-to-head points league, this gamer is looking to shake up their roster and wants to know if they should dump Yadier Molina for Matt Wieters and if Anibal Sanchez should be kicked to the curb for Lance McCullers. I'm going to start by giving the green light to both of those moves. Though I have faith in Sanchez turning it around, he's really been killed by the long ball this year and has a strand rate that's 10% below his career rate. So I do think that he's going to settle in and pitch to something like his career 3.66 ERA. But because the league is so shallow, at this point, I think you need to pounce on McCullers immediately. And you can wait for Sanchez to turn it around on the wire because I don't think there's going to be a lot of demand for going to grab him. But ETL Also, 1692's also mentioned dumping Ryan Vogelsong after his start, and I would definitely advocate making that move. And mentioned that Brandon Belt is available on the waiver wire. I like Brandon Belt. I think he's an upgrade over Jason Hayward right now at the utility position. But Hayward has enough upside that I'd hold on to him even in a 10-team league at this point. You have Corey Dickerson on your disabled list, so you can probably wait a little bit on him. What do you think, RJ?
The two swaps that are suggested, I'd make them both too. Wieters has really turned a corner offensively last year before his elbow injury. While we don't know how he's going to look after a year off, we do know that Molina has been a no-power hitter after trending that way last year, and his average hasn't bounced back to 300 plus like it had been in the past, looking instead a lot like last year's 282 mark. I have no problems cutting him for Wieters' higher upside, especially since the owner doesn't have to wait any longer for Wieters to return from the DL since he's coming back this weekend. In a league that shallow, I definitely kick Vogelsong to the curb. Belt's a fine addition for the UT role. I'd agree that Hayward isn't the type of guy who deserves to be on waivers. However, I think Joey Gallo, who's on this guy's bench, is also a quality UT option right now. And Dickerson will be back from the DL soon. I might just drop Vogelsong for McCullers and call it a day, hoping that Sanchez regresses to the mean pretty quickly.
Yeah, and that's a fair stance as well. Again, it seems like we're on the same page expecting Sanchez to turn it around. So if you do have to cut him, immediately add him to your watch list and be ready to pounce. But otherwise, I have no problem with holding him as well. The next question is submitted by user Husker43. It's a shallow league. It's an 8-team head-to-head league. Huskers eyeballing Gio Gonzalez, Yordano Ventura, John Lackey, and Danny Salazar. First of all, how would you rank those 4 starters, RJ?
I have Salazar pretty clearly first. I think Gio hasn't been great this season, but I'd still rank him second over Ventura with Lackey bringing up the rear.
Yeah, I'm with you there, except for I have Ventura and Gio flip-flop, but, I mean, it's a hair separating the two. Gio's track record is longer, so it is super close, and I definitely agree with that. And I also agree that Salazar is head and shoulders above the rest in that quartet. Would you immediately be pouncing on Danny Salazar? And the Husker would like some advice as to who to cut. And you've looked over their roster, I'm sure. Who are you looking at cutting, and what moves are you looking at making with that roster?
Yeah, an 8-teamer, I think Matt Kemp can be dumped from his team, especially an 8-teamer. Kemp hasn't provided any power this year. He hasn't been the hitter that we thought he would be. In an 8-team league, good outfielders are generally pretty easy to find anyway in any kind of shallow league type. And this guy's roster already has plenty of good outfielders, so I don't mind cutting him for Salazar right away. That would be my primary move, and that's actually the only move that I think I would make with this roster right now.
Yeah, I'm on board with dumping Kemp for Salazar. That's the first move I'd make. There is a secondary move that I'd make, and it looks like we're not in agreement here, but I'd also drop Alex Wood in favor of Ventura or Gio if you like Gio's track record longer. You and I loved Wood coming into the year, and his ERA estimators look good, but I'm a little bit concerned with his poor swinging strike rate. For me, that's a big red flag. He's tied for the 10th lowest swinging strike rate among qualified starters at just 5.9% this year. In a league that shallow, I think I'd rather roll the dice on a bigger bat misser like a Ventura or a Gonzalez. But that said, whoever you go with, I think, is going to be the odd man out when Jose Fernandez returns from the disabled list.
Well, I'd stick with Alex Wood. I think he's been very good over his last 3 starts, despite the strikeouts not being there. An interesting thing to note in his case is that his breakout season last year, he had a much better strikeout rate at home than on the road. It was 10.3 per 9 innings at home and 7.6 per 9 innings on the road. He's maintained a 10.7 per 9 innings mark at home this year, but he's striking out only 4.5 batters per 9 innings on the road. Some parks have better or worse batter's eyes than others based on what the hitter sees when he's in the box looking toward the pitcher. Atlanta just may have a park that's helping to somewhat disguise Wood's release point or otherwise throw off a hitter when facing him in Atlanta. Now, I bring that up because he's made just 3 of his 10 starts this season at home, and two of his other 10 starts have come at Marlins Park, where he had a 6.08 ERA and just a 5.4 strikeout per 9 rate in 13 1/3 innings last season, even while posting his breakout numbers. So conversely, like Atlanta might be favoring the type of pitcher he is and how he's releasing the ball, and Miami, that may be hurting him a little. When his numbers begin to rise back up in the coming weeks, which I think they actually are, the fact that he's making more of his starts at home might end up being overlooked. In any case, fantasy owners may want to bench him on the road if they're concerned at all about his relatively slow start. But I'd continue to use him at home, and I think that he has the upside that I'm taking him over those other guys.
That's fair enough, and I would say that they're all in pretty close to the same tier, at least for me. So I don't think that there's a huge difference, and I do think that most likely they look like the odd person out when Fernandez gets back, but there's still some time on that, and obviously with arms, you always have to worry about somebody missing time, so you may end up having somebody to put on the disabled list at that point. The last question is brought to us by Vlad Rules. Vlad is first in a 12-team standard 5x5 roto non-keeper league. It has been presented an offer, at least if I'm reading the post correctly, of Craig Kimbrell and Steven Strasburg for his Mark Teixeira and Jock Peterson. I'll immediately state that I would not do that deal. I think that that is a gross overpay for the pitchers that he'd be getting. But Vlad's considering countering with a 3-for-2 of Ryan Zimmerman, A.J. Pollock, and Teixeira for Kimbrell and Strasburg, which I think is more reasonable, but I'm not overly enthused about that deal either. I think there's a number of big power, low average hitters on Vlad's team, and I understand the desire to divest himself of some pop in hopes of improving his batting average. What would you suggest, RJ?
I don't think you can take either of those deals. I completely, I would completely say no to the first one. I wouldn't even make a counter because neither of those guys are guys that I'm looking to add right now. I do agree that it's smart to target a starting pitcher, though, as his team only has Kershaw, Salazar, Lynn, and Gio on the roster with Fernandez on the way back at some point. If I could get something in a trade for Brad Ziegler, I would do so. He's pretty set at reliever. If not, I'd cut him for a high average hitter who can be slipped into the utility position over Jay Bruce. I'd then look to package Bruce and Teixeira or Bruce and Alvarez for a better player at first base or third base, preferably one with a high average who can also provide some power. Ideally, you may be able to land both. Something if you do like Tex, Alvarez, and Bruce for like a Rizzo and Moustakas, or a similar first baseman that the Moustakas owner might own, like a Votto or Freeman. That's going to help you a considerable amount in average. You're also not going to give up that as much in power as you might have, while the other owner taking less power at those two positions might welcome the power upgrade, especially if they have other high batting average guys on their roster. If the Moustakas owner has a high average medium power guy at first base, like a Hosmer or maybe an Adam Lind, you can trade that same trio of Sugglers for Moose, the first baseman, and then also get a nice ace type, second starter type to boost the rotation too, and address that hole as well. So that's kind of what I'm looking to do with this team.
Yeah, good call. I think dealing some power either for batting average or some pitching help, or perhaps both, is a good move. I like the idea of shopping Tex. I think that's not a bad play. I think if you want to go even smaller scale, I might look at Brandon Belt's owner, see if that roster could use a little bit of power, and try and maybe pull off a 1-for-1 swap. I'm buying what Belt's selling. He's been very good over the last year and a half, actually almost 2 years. Obviously, he's been dinged by injuries, which is always a concern. He plays in a pitcher-friendly park, but really good line drive rate, makes a solid amount of contact, good lineup spot. So I think you're going to get average there. I think you're going to get some counting stats, going to sacrifice some power, but that might be a guy that I target. And as you said, definitely could use a little bit of pitching help. And I think getting rid of guys like Bruce and Teixeira or possibly Pedro Alvarez is definitely in your best interest. The guy that I wouldn't get rid of as far as your low average power hitters is Chris Carter. He seems to be heating up, and I think he's probably going to fetch a little bit less than the guys who already have some better numbers under their belt. And are you in agreement as far as holding on to Carter of that group?
Yeah, I like Carter. I don't think that you're going to get back in trade what he's worth. If you're going to trade him, it needs to be after a stretch where he's hit like 7 or 8 homers in a 2-week stretch, and somebody's looking to capitalize, thinking, wow, this guy might actually be a 50-homer hitter, over the long haul. So I'm going to pay that type of price and deal with his low average in a trade. So until he has that kind of stretch, I'm not looking to move him.
Yeah, I think you're going to end up getting underpaid for his services if you were to shop him. So that's going to wrap things up for the podcast today. Thank you for joining us, listeners, and thank you for joining me, RJ.
No problem. Have a good day.
You too. Take care, and good luck in tonight's competition at FanDuel.
Thanks, you too.